Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from Innova.buzz, and I'm really excited today to welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast all the way from Barcelona in Spain, Jacqueline Basulto. She's the founder and CEO of SeedX and a visionary builder who has turned a modest $200 investment into over $1 billion of tangible client impact. She specializes in empowering organizations to find the perfect balance between high-tech growth and human-centric connection. So something that is very close to my heart. Welcome to the Innova.buzz podcast, Jacqueline. It's a real privilege to have you here as my guest.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here speaking with you and your audience, and I am really flattered by your introduction. So thanks.
Excellent. Now, for the benefit of our listeners, particularly if you're a first-time listener, before we dive into the conversation with Jacqueline, each episode's a candid and practical conversation with a remarkable guest like Jacqueline, exploring how they create impact, how they build human connection in their work. And I like to dig a little bit deeper beyond what their expertise is and how they might go about their day-to-day business, to really figure out their knowledge, their attitudes, and their values. And hopefully there'll be something there for you, the listener, to take away and perhaps build into your life or into your business. As we go on, at the end, we'll wrap up with our signature buzz round. It's the same three questions I ask of every guest, so that has a bit of a running theme through each episode. And, of course, all the show notes and the links to the resources will be in the show notes as well. And you can revisit anything that sparks your curiosity later on. Jacqueline, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I know that you've designed a life and a business that balances the hard logic of enterprise growth with the human need for connection and being grounded and having a balanced lifestyle. Part of that is living in Barcelona. Share with us more about what drives you in this mission and what impact you aim to make in the world.
Sure. I think early in my career, at the very beginning actually, I saw what it was to work in a role where you don't get to see the impacts that you're having on people. And I was really upset or saddened by that. And so what really drew me to marketing and starting a business in the first place was the ability to have a really direct, tangible impact on people that I was working with, whether it was at first businesses helping them make an impact on the business. And now beyond that, of course, I enjoy doing that for our clients. But being able to do that for our team, giving them a great space to work, seeing them thrive and be happy drives me a lot. And so I think really what drives me is almost like knowledge that I can be better and that I should be constantly improving to make the greatest impact on the world that I can. Otherwise, I feel like it would be against my value to stay still, to stand still, or to not be trying to be kind of the best possible input into the world that I could be.
It's fascinating. You mentioned team there, and I love the holistic view. You talked about improving yourself and making things better for your business and your team as well, and of course your customers. So I love that you've kind of encapsulated everything, and particularly because a lot of businesses, once they really get underway, it's all focused on business and they kind of neglect one aspect of that. Usually it's the internal team. It's fascinating how, I've lost the thread now. Talk to us a little bit about your team first, because one of the thoughts I had as you were talking about that is, I think you've got a distributed team all around the world. Is that right?
Yes. So we have a team that spans multiple continents. Uh, no one in Australia or New Zealand yet, sadly, just because the time zone is so difficult, as you know. But our team is based in the US, South America, Ukraine, parts of Europe, Spain mainly, and Kenya. Um, and we may have a few other people who don't fit into those categories, but we've always, since the very beginning, been a distributed team. And it first kind of came from a place of need. I was 22 when I started SeedX, and so I really had just $200. That's not an exaggeration. I had almost no money, probably negative money, if you include school expenses, school loans, and things like that. And so I was trying to figure out how can I receive help, like technical help at the best costs from the best possible people. And the first place that we hired besides myself and my partner was in Ukraine. And if you don't know, Ukraine has an incredible talent pool for a lot of things, but especially for UX, UI design, so website design and development. And so we hired Vlad, who was like our number three on the SeedX team and still is on our team. And he's a good friend now that we've met in person multiple times. But it kind of came from necessity at first. And now it's grown into just really our understanding, or we've really embraced that people, no matter where they're from, are talented or great people, right? And so we've developed a team that what is remote and competitive and has a similar culture despite being far away from each other. I think a little bit ahead of the curve because it was before COVID happened that we started working remotely and with an international team. And so before it was like a popular thing to do, we were doing that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I managed global teams in my corporate career, and that was long before it was fashionable to do. It wasn't necessarily work from home,
Yes.
but it was because it was a global company. One of the
Yes.
things that I always envisioned with a global team, because of that challenge of the time zones, I thought surely you can turn that time zone challenge into an advantage. And we weren't able to do that because we were producing physical things. So there was a physical aspect to our work. But I have this vision for companies that work in software or in, producing things that are online, of somebody does some work here in this particular time zone, hands it off to the team member in the next time zone, who then hands it off after they've done their work to the person in the next time zone, and then it comes back around eventually to that person. So effectively, the project is being worked on 24/7, or not 20,
Yes.
20. Well, yes, it is 24 hours, not necessarily 7 days, but to take advantage of that time zone. So do you have anything in place where you work in that sort of manner?
Yes, so we do that, and it's really great because we ask everyone to prepare the next time zone essentially, or when they log off, make sure that everyone you're working with understands where you left off, what needs to be done, what you're thinking about, what's most important, and then the next time zone will pick it up. And our clients really love it, actually, because we just had one client who was only US based until 2 years ago. They expanded into a London office and then operations throughout Europe. And they've commented, like, wow, it's so great to have someone who's able to respond when it's 2 a.m. in New York, but there's a problem on the website because someone in London is trying to use it, right? So it is a really cool thing to take advantage of. Um, and yes, and besides that, we all try to be online for a few hours overlapping just
Hmm.
to be able to connect. Uh, but it is a really nice feature of having a spread out team.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that, sort of coming back to the thread I lost before, around the culture as you build that team around the world, because obviously when you first hire people, I'm guessing you don't always meet them in person first off before you make a decision to hire. So how do you select the people? What's your criteria? How do you make sure that they're a cultural fit, and how do you build that culture, or how did you build that culture as you grew SeedX?
Absolutely, it's a great question. I would say that uh, first of all, a lot of our great employees come through referrals, people on our team that we really trust, who
Yeah.
know someone that they've worked with, who they really trust. So that's one way that we can kind of gauge culture. Of course, that doesn't happen all of the time, and it's probably a minority versus a majority. The other method is to do a trial of work, which we typically try to do, and it's fairly common within the remote world to pay for someone who's a candidate to work on a small project, for example, and we try to get a sense of beyond the interview, what their work style is like, what their communication style is like, and what their expectations are as well for us and vice versa. That works really well because it gives us a chance to kind of test run the relationship before we both commit to it. Um, and that typically helps with long-term retention and making the right decisions. But of course, it's difficult, and I think that in the remote world, it's even more uh, you have to be even more independent, even more kind of driven, self-driven to perform because you're working at home and I'm never going to be, behind you watching your screen and making sure that
Yeah.
you're working. And so we look for and need really self-motivated and driven people.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I I kind of think what you touched on there is a really important point. I mean, I always felt most uncomfortable when I thought that I was had somebody looking over my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I still prefer, like if I'm working with clients, for example, and I'm side by side and doing something on the computer and they're sitting there next to me, I say, can I take this away and I'll get back to you
Yes.
when it's done, because it's just more comfortable there. But of course, that does require people that are self-motivated, that don't need that watching, that are almost more comfortable not being watched. So
Yes.
how do you, or one of the questions I had, obviously you mentioned the person who was your first hire in Ukraine and that you've met in person now and become friends. Do you have like in-person meetups of all the people? Because that relationship development, where you get to that level of trust that you consider them a friend, is, I think, sort of a really powerful growth within the human connection space in the company, and that's really important, particularly if it's a culture like yours. So do you encourage that between employees? Like, do you have something where all the people can get together and get to know one another at a face-to-face level?
Yes, absolutely. So we try to have meetups as much as we can. It's really difficult to have like global meetups. We actually did one time here in Barcelona during my wedding week. the whole team came, which was really amazing
Yeah.
for us to all meet. But on a more regular basis, we tried to at least have the US team meet, the South American team. And so while I said we hire everywhere, and at first we were truly kind of hiring wherever because we were still figuring out what was important to culture, right? Now we try to hire in specific pockets. So, like, we hire in Argentina specifically, and in Spain, and in Kenya, and et cetera, specific areas. That way we can make it so that people can meet up and get to know their local, at least their local coworkers in person. Uh, I wanted to touch on, and I think that's really important, but I think that our culture, even though we have kind of like the Ukrainian culture and the Kenyan culture and the South American culture, there are still elements that kind of go across all of those groups. And we're still a relatively small team. We have under 70 people. So I would say, like, the feeling that I had at the beginning with our first like 10 or 20 employees, where we all felt like we're building this thing together, which was really special and I think bonded us and made us really close, is still somewhat alive within those smaller areas and within the team in general, because those people who started out with us are now the leaders of those teams, and they're hopefully making that message pervasive through the rest of the team. So that's really cool to see as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, we talked a lot about human connection and your team and growing the team. I know in your work there's a very strong element of data-driven and looking at the data that, whether it be in marketing or other areas, how do you kind of balance that with that human connection and the relationship aspect that we've been talking about internally now, but now we're looking at externally. So say whether it's the relationship with the client or the relationships of the clients with their customers or their ideal clients.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think they're completely intertangled, because if I think about my relationship with my clients, at the end of the day, if I'm able to give them good data that makes it easier for them to run their company, then that builds our relationship on a level that's deeper than me just being kind to them. Of course, I'm kind to them and I work hard for them, and our team does as well. But at the end of the day, our job is to give them the tools they need to market and to grow more efficiently. And a lot of that lies in making sure that they have the right information. And then I would say, on a different note, when it comes to marketing to an actual end consumer, to our clients and consumers, usually data shows that what is working the best in marketing is what is connecting to the human. So it's interesting because the way that marketing works now, everything is data driven, but there's still like a creative face to that. So if I'm putting an ad on Facebook Meta, that ad has a creative, human-centric face that people are seeing, and the data is just behind that, powering it, helping the algorithm learn about the person, etc. But it necessitates that I have a good human-centric creative that I'm showing them in an ad. And if that ad is not communicating to the human, it won't perform well. The data will show that, right? And the more that it connects with that person, the better it'll perform. And the same goes across any marketing channel. If you think about email marketing, text messages, blogs, websites, whatever it is, at the end of the day, the most human-centric and the most effective campaigns and assets are the ones that are communicating on a deeper level to a person about the problem that they're experiencing.
Yeah, it's fascinating that these days we can see in the data the response, I guess, and that gives us some sense of that human connection. I always had this concern back in the early days of email marketing that when people start to send out mass emails and just based on the list, and they might go to the level of personalising it by saying, "Dear Jacqueline," but then it's the same email that came to me. So it's not taking anything into account about you other than the address, right? And what it's calling you. And I saw a tendency of people like abdicating their, I almost call it a responsibility to get to know the person who they're actually communicating with to some degree so that they can talk to them about their needs rather than, hey, here's what I've got. And I thought this is the real danger of email marketing, and yet it's so powerful. And I see that tendency today in AI, and I guess it's fascinating that you're taking the approach that data can tell you how the response is. What are your thoughts on that danger and how to avoid it?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, I think, because AI makes it easier to just spread a message to as many people as you can. You can spam thousands and thousands of people, basically, right? In the press of a button. But I also think that makes it harder to get attention. And so the more actually thoughtful, the more personalized and crafted a message is, the better it'll resonate with people. And funny enough, there's AI to help you do that too. So I think it just comes down to how you're using it, and if you're using it intelligently, just like anything else. Like we could have said the same thing about letters, snail mail, right? Like there are people who send the same snail mail letter with "Dear Jacqueline," blah 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 blah. And then there are people who send handwritten notes or who send messages because you like this specific type of shoe or whatever it is. So I think it's really just people. I think people are, crazy about AI, and it's a big buzzword and everyone's talking about it, but it's just human behavior repeating itself in a new area.
Yeah, I like that. That's right, because when I started seeing the trends, and I thought, is this like when email marketing came about, or when some other things came about? And yeah, it's a tool. I like that, and there's, I think you talked earlier a little bit about the human curiosity and how you're always learning and how you're encouraging your team to always learn. And part of that, I think, is how do I best apply this tool?
Yes. And you can be lazy in applying it and do, the bad practice, but there are also really great ways to use the tool. And we encourage our team to use AI, again, just intellectually. Like, don't just put something in it, spit it out, and then throw it on a client's asset. Like, that's a horrible idea. But yes, you should use it to fine tune your thoughts, to brainstorm, to think of things that you wouldn't have otherwise, to check your work, just like spell check, right? Why wouldn't we leverage the technology that we have, but just do so in a way that's mature, creative, and smart.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I like what you said there, checking your own work, and I think that's one really powerful way to use AI, and the best way I've found to do that is because most of these large language models are programmed to be agreeable. So if I type something in as simple as "here's my idea, here's what I want to do, what do you think?" it'll come back and say it's a great idea. So I've changed my approach and I say, here's my idea. Can you tear this apart? Tell me
Yes.
why you think this is the worst ever idea. And it will actually do that. Sometimes I say, no need to be gentle. I'm not easily offended or anything. So I sort of add that if I don't think it's really really critiquing something. But then the value of that is it will come back and it'll point some things out, and often there'll be things there that I just haven't thought of.
Right.
So here's a risk, or here's what may go wrong with this idea, or here's a gap that hasn't been addressed in this idea. And then I can turn it around and I can say, well, how can I mitigate all these risks? What can I do to make sure that doesn't happen? What can I do to strengthen my original idea? And then I end up with something that's much more powerful.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's just using the tool better, right? My husband likes to put in make fun of me based on my prompts to stay down to earth.
Yeah, that's nice. And does it?
It does. It's really funny, but you do have to tell it. Like mine is really nice as well.
Yeah.
I think because it picks up on like my feminine tone and so I have to tell it, okay, be a little meaner. Really roast me.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll have to try that one. Yeah. All right. Well, it's one of the things I find fascinating about your story is, you've journeyed from the US and basically living in Barcelona now. And I know we had a conversation about what you liked about that, but at the same time as you've grown this company that from $200 to over 70 employees now, and serving customers to the point of impacting to the tune of billions of dollars, you're also raising a family at the same time. So how do you juggle all those things, and your relationship and your family and looking after your daughter?
Yes, that's a great question. I think uh, I think that I'm really fortunate that I get to live my life the way that I want to, like you're saying, right? And I think that a lot of what has made it possible has been one, accepting help. So I think when I first started SeedX, I was really nervous and uncomfortable delegating and letting tasks go to other people. And so it's really important to get help at work and to train people and empower them. And that's like a constant process. I'm still trying to train people and empower them and get rid of things that I am doing to make sure that they're done better by other people. And then I get help at home as well. I think Spain affords me much better child schooling than the US in terms of cost and what it looks like, which is super helpful. So my daughter, she's 3 and she's already in full-time school, which is super helpful.
Hmm?
Um, I have help around the house as well, which I'm really grateful for. And I was embarrassed about as well when I first became a mom. I felt like I had to do everything. And then the other thing is my husband is my business partner. So I don't know if I've shared this with you, but when I started SeedX, my husband was in medical school, and he also had an interest in entrepreneurship, but hadn't just he was following the kind of traditional path of he wanted to be a doctor. And when I started getting clients and a lot of work, he decided to do it with me, and then he quit his school to basically grow SeedX with
Mm.
me. So I think that one of the reasons we're both able to have a fulfilling kind of full life in multiple ways is that we're really in sync with each other. So we're always talking about work and helping each other, and everything is aligned. Our financial uh, desires and our values and how we're going to spend our weekend. We really work together, kind of splice and dice and attack everything. So that partnership is just like, I can't imagine having a partner bootstrapping a company who wasn't with me every day, basically married to me, right? So, yeah.
Okay, well, that's a little secret that maybe people might take on board for what it's worth. One of the things that's fascinating, you talk about the importance of getting help in general and transitioning from that feeling of I have to do everything, which I was fascinated you said that when you talked about being a mum. I kind of always had this feeling when I started my business, I thought I have to do everything.
Yeah.
And then, so how did you kind of evolve your mindset there into being comfortable asking for help, being comfortable saying my job is to train people and to actually offload things that I'm currently doing as much as I can?
Yeah. Well, at home and with my daughter, I think that I I try really hard not to fall into the narrative that moms have to do everything, because I think that it's unfair. Um, you're just a human being, right?
Hmm.
And historically, people didn't do it alone. It takes a village to raise a family. And I also try to root myself in the realistic in reality and in what how my mother raised me. And my mother was a working mother, and she had to travel for 1 hour commute back and forth from home to go to work. And uh, I was with my grandmother at home, and so I didn't really see her during the week. I saw her on the weekends and at night for maybe an hour or so before I went to sleep. And so when I look at my life and I think about that, I get to work from home most of the time. Sometimes I have to travel and I don't see my daughter for a few days. But for the most part, I'm at home. Even if she's with a babysitter, she's like 2 doors away. I can go say hi. I have this amazing flexibility. And not only that, I remember thinking that it was really cool that my mom my mom was working and doing something for herself, and I want her to grow up knowing that she can also do that and have those choices. Um, and I think of mothers and parents who have to make even bigger sacrifices, and that's helped me really put everything into perspective. Uh, I also think when you become a parent, you see that the people who help you are not just like nameless people who make you feel bad for getting help. Like the people who helped me with my daughter, I love them. They're like family now.
Hmm.
And so I think as you see that too, it becomes less daunting and bad feeling. And then at work, I think that first of all, I just couldn't do the work anymore. I think you start to see that you are not the best at everything. I definitely am not. And so there's no reason that I should be developing a website. I'm not good at that. Like, let someone who's better at that do it. It's better for the client. And then on the more kind of soft skill areas that I am better at, like sales and things like that, I look at it from a lens of if I keep myself in this position, not only am I hurting the future growth of the company, but I'm not giving the ability to someone that I'm working with to level up in their career as well, to become better, to replace my role, to eventually grow beyond that. And so if you're not allowing people to help you at work, you're also not creating room for people to grow. And sure, people might make mistakes as they're growing, but it's the only way to continue to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you said there from mistakes, I guess it's important to have guardrails in place so that the mistake doesn't have a major impact in a negative sense on either your business or, even more importantly, the customer if they're working directly. But at the same time, learning what doesn't work is a valuable lesson as well, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And I think it's just something I've learned as a business owner is you lose money making mistakes. You make mistakes and have to face the backlash, but then you hire people and they also have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of loss of money involved in owning a business, and there's a lot of, error that happens just from being human. But yes, you hope that you put in guardrails and you teach the lessons that you have learned from making your own mistakes to the people you're working with. But there will always be something that comes up. For example, we were talking about hiring. Now, some members of our team are participating more in the hiring process, and we allow them to make decisions on who they want to be overseeing, right? And they make mistakes that maybe we've gone through already, like red flags that we see during the interview process, or believing someone isn't a good fit for our culture. And so they make that mistake, then they have to let that person go, or the person leaves the company. And losing someone is costly. It takes time as well. It lowers efficiency, etc. But those are also lessons that your team has to learn and go through. So, yes, c'est la vie of a business owner.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about starting up with a student debt, and so I think it's helpful sometimes to reframe these mistakes as rather than, oh, I lost money on that, as, okay, I paid for this lesson. So it's just like a training course I did, except it's real life training or
That's how
on the
I
job
try to
training.
look at it, definitely. Yes, I've been through years and years of the business school of life. Yeah.
All right, well, we've covered lots of different areas and been a really fascinating conversation. I think it's a good time now to move on to the buzz, our innovation round. As I said earlier,
Amazing.
it's the same three questions that I ask of every guest, and they're very much AI focused and
Okay.
really about the human side of that. So, you ready?
Yes.
Excellent. So the first one's about innovation. So what's the most innovative way you've seen AI used to strengthen human relationships?
That's a great question. That is interesting. Um, I would say by giving by giving us information. I'll give a few examples because my brain just went all over the place. Uh, uh, so I wear my Aura ring every day, which is a fitness tracker. It helps with like sleeping patterns and all kinds of things. I think that really strengthens my relationship to my own health. I think being able to get information really quickly is always helpful. Like with ChatGPT, when I'm talking to my husband, we're constantly looking up like, what is this? What is that? And we're constantly like having great conversation from the speed at which we can get information. Um, yeah, I feel like it just makes it easier to progress faster in building a relationship with something or with someone else. I hope I answered the question. I don't even remember what it was at this point.
No, that's a really good answer. And I think you touched on a couple of things there that I can relate to as well. I don't have a ring, but I have a fitness watch and the tracker there, and I'm always looking at that. So it's I never really thought of that in the sense of human connection, because it's really connecting to my own health data and seeing, how's my fitness, how well did I sleep, is there something I've done. So if I've had a bad night's sleep, or I feel really drained or tired one morning, I can see that usually in the data, and then I can think about, well, what might have caused that, whether I'd had a late night or whether I'd had a sleepless night thinking about something, or whether I had coffee too late in the day, and I can make adjustments accordingly. So that's really good. And the other thing you said about always, like my wife and I do very much the same thing you described there. We'll have a conversation, and one of us might say, "Oh, I wonder why that is," or "I wonder who did that," and then, "Oh, okay. Well, all we have to do is ask one of the AI tools, and we'll do that." And that kind of takes the conversation further down that particular curiosity, and I think that's actually really a good use of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thinking about your own experience, what's the best thing you've done to integrate AI in a way that enhances human connection?
What's that I've integrated in my work?
Yeah, in your work or in personal space?
I think personally, AI is a really great trip planner. I've used it to plan a lot of trips for me, like as a personal planner, to help me figure out. For example, we took my daughter to Disney World in October, and it was so great at planning the exact rides you should go to at what time and which rides can she go on, and all of these specific nuances that made the experience less stressful. And I think in terms of work, I'm mostly working these days on business development, on sales, and AI really helps. The different tools that exist really help you understand who you should be connecting with and what problems they're having. And so it's helped me connect with the right people, which is beneficial for me as a salesperson and business owner, but it's also beneficial for that person that they're getting the right types of messages. So that's an interesting thing that I foresee will continue to evolve.
Yeah, I think I've certainly used both of those applications as a tool. I've done travel planning with AI, and it's been really fascinating. I kind of wondered about how tight did I do it, and did I leave enough space for kind of serendipitous discovery, as I call it? But I think I got it right. I just try to be aware of that. And in terms of the business development side, I've always been big on getting really clear about who your ideal customer is, and developing a persona to the point where you actually think of that persona as a real person. And then when you speak to people that fit that persona, that you're actually serving them really well, because they're saying, oh, you understand my needs, and you know where I'm coming from, and so on. And AI can really help you nail that much more effectively. All right, the final question is along the lines of, given all these developments in AI, what are the key skills that we should be developing as a business owner, as individuals, to help differentiate ourselves from the norm?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think a lot of the skills are skills that are timeless skills. Pushing ourselves to be better critical thinkers, pushing ourselves to learn constantly, to be ahead of the curve, to understand how to leverage AI in the best possible ways, how it's evolving, and to push ourselves to be creative so that we can be creative in its application, more creative than machines. All of these things, I think, have always been important, but I think the creativity is ever more important because machines can do a lot of technical work. How can we make sure we have human creativity within that? And then again, learning and thinking critically. Learning is happening even faster. So we have to be even more on top of that piece. And I know I'm an avid learner, but I'm trying to push myself even more to be unafraid of novelty, and to keep kind of learning the new things that are coming up every day.
Yeah, there's a couple of key points there I think that are really important. So the critical thinking one is one I always have front of mind, because sometimes I think, does AI make us lose our critical thinking? And yet it's sort of almost a corollary to what perhaps is happening if we're aware, which is it's making us think more critically. And the creativity part, I love how you framed that as well. Sort of, how can I be creative about this?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well,
Yeah.
sorry, you were
No,
going
I
to
was
say
just
something?
going to say yes, always important. These skills are always important, and I hope they continue to be taught in schools as well. I think about how different schooling must be now. With the advent of AI. I can't imagine having had it in college and university. So, yes.
Yeah. Well, if I went back to my university times and thought about all the different tools that have developed since
Yes,
then,
exactly.
things would be much different. One of the thoughts that has come up in conversations with other people, though, is this idea of we've come through our time and we've learned a lot of things, and earlier we were talking about mistakes. So we've made all these mistakes that perhaps we wouldn't make today, and therefore we might not even get those lessons, the benefits from those lessons. And so how does that impact today's generation? If you think about people growing up or going through school now, they're not going to be collecting the experiences we've collected as they go forward, and how do we make sure they get experiences that allow them to develop and live through painful times in terms of mistakes and lessons that stay with them for life. That's probably a whole episode in itself, a philosophical discussion.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. This has been fantastic. Now, where can people find out more about you, about SeedX, the work you do, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared with us today?
Sure. They can find SeedX at our website, seed, SeedX.us. And then I am on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, so people can follow me and see my thoughts about marketing and leadership, or reach out to me. Like you said, I'm happy to speak with anyone who'd like to. And it's just under my name, Jacqueline Basulto.
Excellent. All right. And we'll have those links in the show notes, as I said before, so people can click straight through. Finally, Jacqueline, as we wrap it up, what's one action you hope our listeners will take after hearing our conversation today, something that would make you feel like our time together was truly worthwhile to somebody else?
Sure. That's a great question. I think learn something new and try to connect with someone who's not from your part of the world. We're connecting. Yeah. We're from different parts. I'm from the US and I'm in Barcelona, and you're in Australia. And I talked a lot about our team and how we share so many things from across the globe. And I think it's a unique experience that I have, that I get to connect with so many different types of people. And I'd love for people to have that experience as well.
Yeah, well, that's a great call to action, and I think the connecting with somebody in a different part of the world is learning in and of itself, because we all bring our unique perspective that is driven in part by our culture and environment that we live in.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline, for sharing your thoughts, your wisdom and your insights with us so generously today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope it's been valuable for you as well. And all the best for the future, and please do stay in touch.